Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Kaga. So recently it was brought to my attention, partially just looking through the videos I've uploaded on the channel, that I have yet to post anything with the Soviet destroyers involved. Which is kind of strange because I remember the very first Kraken Unleashed award I had gotten on the live server was in the Tier 6 Ognavoy. So it's kind of strange, I never uploaded that or any of the other nice rounds I had in these rather interesting destroyers. And I'll say they're interesting for a reason. Just to recap the broad characteristics of the line, they're relatively quick, they have pretty useful guns. They're the 130mm Persuasion, so that makes them the larger of the destroyer caliber guns in the game. They have this characteristic of having very squishy turrets. Anyone who has captained, at the very least, in the Ognavoy, the Nevny, the Kiev as well, has probably had the situations where they've been high explosive spammed into the very uncomfortable state of having no workable gun turrets left. But what else about these guns makes them quite surprising? Well, they're very flat firing destroyer guns, and they can reasonably load and unload just as quickly as as fast as you can really tap that trigger if you've got the right skill set on board. And that means that you can just turn them into a DPS machine. Now that means that you're almost always spotted. Never mind that they have some of the worst concealment ratings that you can ever imagine on a destroyer. I believe the Kiev and the Tashkent can be spotted something like 11-12 kilometers out, just straight out of the box, without any of the camouflage paints or captain skills added. It's they have detection ranges on the order of many cruisers in the game after they've been upgraded. So what else about these destroyers besides their interesting guns and their high detectability? They've got some of the worst torpedoes you could ever imagine on a destroyer. Some of them are ill-suited to even knife fight with. The Tashkent is interesting because that 3x3 configuration, and I'm pretty certain that they can go a decent distance. I think it's like maybe like 6 kilometers. I'd have to double check that one. The first that you can actually use a little more reliably even in knife fights, which makes it interesting. But enough about the torpedoes. We're not here to use the torpedoes on Soviet destroyers. We're all about the guns. And you will notice right off the bat that Destroyer Tashkent, the one who was actually captaining this particular Tashkent in this battle, is actually using the armor piercing against a cruiser. Which, when I first looked at this replay, I found a little bit interesting that that was the ammunition choice being used, but then again it does make a lot of sense. The 130mm high explosive just... there's quite a good chance that even against weakly side armor of Japanese heavy cruisers, that the high explosive will just get eaten up and do something like 300 to 500 damage, just kind of meh. Not really worth pulling the trigger, making yourself a prime target for enemy battleships, so not really something I would recommend. And I can tell you for a fact that whittling enemy ships down from about 50,000 health down to nothing, 300 to 600 damage at a time, is very tiring. Even when you have a few fires factored in, that still takes an inconsiderable amount of effort. far more effort than is reasonable to expect in any given match just to make 1 or 2 kills. And you know, you take this little song and dance of the punchy guns, the swapping of ammunition, and for what all intents and purposes, high detectability and crap torpedoes, and what you get really isn't a true destroyer even at tier 8, it's closer to a stealth light cruiser. It's basically somewhere between, as far as I can figure it, a mid-tier US destroyer and the Mikhail Kutuzov, the tier 8 Russian light cruiser. The premium one, you know, because the Russian cruisers are coming soon-ish with the trademark TM over it that Wargaming is so famous for. But that in of itself is not the entire story about these cruisers. And once Destroyer Tashkent peels himself off of this island, we'll get back to showing you exactly what we mean by one of the more special traits of this particular destroyer line. And I'm going to keep using destroyer line because, you know, they're classified as destroyers, even though I will jokingly refer to them as stealth light cruiser escorts. So one of those things, and you already notice, is that even in a turn with the speed boost, he's already hit a speed that Shimakaze would be quite envious of to hit in a straight line. And with that speed boost going in a straight line, it's almost hitting 47 knots. Oh, just broke that actually. Damn, that thing is blisteringly quick. And in the space of time it took me to describe what's going on, he's already managed to move himself half an entire grid square off of that island to engage this tier 7 Polish destroyer, the Błyskawica, and taking it under fire. That's interesting. Huh. Looks like the even with the 7 guns on that ship, the slow rotation time makes it rather hard to evade fire from the 2 destroyers closing in on it, at the same time as trying to service those targets with its 7 guns. Now, I can tell you for a fact that there's one thing that most destroyer captains hate more than anything else other than being fighter camped. And this one thing is the Soviet destroyers, because once they decide to latch on to you, there's nothing you can do. Absolutely nothing. It would take an incredible misplay by the Soviet destroyer captain for you to walk away from it. And I do mean incredible misplay, because I mean, you just see the reason right there. 40 knots in a turn. And over 47 knots in a straight line. You are not getting away from that. Ooh. And it looks like Destroyer Tashkent has spotted the enemy ranger. Lunch. I know that sounds weird, but it is lunch. And admittedly, right now, I'm still having this moment of AP or HE question cropping through my mind, because that was a Citadel penetration. If he's doing this with this high explosive, every one of those that was a Citadel would have been around on order of 1,000 damage more for the AP Citadel. But, I can see why at the same time. He doesn't know if the enemy ranger will be launching his squadrons anytime soon, so Oh, and speaking of the devil, there are dive bombers. So maybe the high explosive spam is warranted because, you know, the last thing you really want in a destroyer is getting nuked by a very experienced dive bomber captain. When you keep scoring these citadel penetrations with the high explosive, and whoa, those got close. A little close for comfort there, but so long as we can keep servicing the target, that ranger won't get a second shot, and we'll just be able to sit down laughing like a maniac as we steam off over the horizon into the sunset. Lunch was served. Did he not get a chance to send the command of those torpedo bombers? Doesn't look like it. Or if he did, it was dropped behind destroyer Tashkent, which is perfectly reasonable considering, 47 knots. It's about 50% faster than your typical destroyer. Well, not really 50%, it's closer to like 40%, but from the perspective of the air, that's kind of what the lead looks like. The 50% because one of those things that the Soviet destroyers have a tendency to do rather poorly in comparison to other destroyers is respond in turn or via a turn to avoid airdrop torpedoes. So if you give it a little more lead, you can use the speed against them. And this is one of those moments I'm sitting here going, either the Fuso needs a little more armor, or Soviet 130mm AP ammunition is as strong in warships as it is in World of Tanks on the box tank, the Su-100Y, or as it is in War Thunder on the same tank. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I hope to see you around for future content. In particular, this coming week, there's going to be a continuation of our armored warfare exploration of the Chinese main battle tanks. Look forward to that tomorrow. Regularly scheduled War Thunder Wednesdays with some interesting tank RB for you all. And then we'll finish off Thursday and Friday with some more World of Warships. And speaking of warships, please let me know in the comments if you're looking forward to the new Soviet cruisers. I know that they're a bit interesting since some of them have outright battleship levels of health and some of the weirdest guns in the game. Anyway, thank you for having bared with me for the better part of 13 minutes. So thank you, and I'd like to bid you a good day.